All
All
right.
right.
Hello, everyone. In this episode of Director Discussions, where do I begin? I'm honored to sit down with one of my favorite filmmakers, the amazing Sean Anders. I mean, off the top of my head, you may know him as the director. He's worked on countless amazing films, Instant Family, Daddy's Home. But we are here to talk his most recent film, Spirited, which is on Apple Plus right now. Sean, thank you so much for taking the time to come on today, sir. How you doing?
Good. I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Dude, I'm doing amazing. We talked about this a little bit off air, but I'm sure you can see my Christmas decorations are up. My Christmas tree is poking in a little bit here. And my family wanted to put up the Christmas tree, but I was saying to them, no, I have an important interview. You're not allowed to put it up in my filming space. And then they said, really, who are you interviewing? And I said, Sean Anders. They didn't care. They still put up the Christmas tree. But for a minute there, I had a little bit of street cred. But we were saying we think it adds to the ambiance of the interview, right? The Christmas
Oh,
tree.
it's lovely.
So
Yeah.
just for you, man. But no, let's talk Spirited. I mean, it's fair to say Spirited is a Christmas film, right? You put
Oh,
it out
yeah.
for the season. I mean, I think if you watch it, you kind of get that idea. But I was chatting with Colin Trevorrow, who I don't know. He I don't know if you know. He directs Jurassic World and stuff. And normally, whenever I finish up my interviews, I ask, if you could do any type of film, what would it be? And most times it tends to be, a Western, a horror film. But surprisingly, I've had a lot of directors say musicals. And that always kind of takes me back. And I'm like, musicals, what is it about musicals? Like, and I said it to Colin, what is it about musicals that appeals to you? And he said, they're just so theatrical. I mean, was that the process for you? Was this your pipe dream? Some people want to be the next Scorsese or the Tarantino. You just wanted to make a musical. Was that your childhood dream?
Not my childhood dream, but I have wanted to make a musical for a long time.
Yeah.
And yeah, and definitely the theatricality, because that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to make a big, crazy, old-fashioned kind of throwback musical that's like a Christmas extravaganza kind of thing. I didn't want to make some subtle artsy musical. I wanted a big, bombastic, crazy one.
Artsy musical. There's not enough of those in Hollywood. That's what we need more. I think if you say the whole film's like a metaphor for grief or capitalism, I think you win an Academy Award. That's basically my method for breaking into Hollywood. I'll make a film, I'll shoot it in black and white, some foreign language, and make it about grief, and they'll give me an Oscar. Is that
Just make
basically
sure,
how it
yeah, make
works?
sure that there's a few characters in there that are in a deep malaise, because
Yeah.
that's Oscar bait right there. As
And
long
and
as
dude,
there's somebody in a malaise, you're good. You're
the
doing
bad
great.
guys are the audience, and it's your fault for paying tickets. You're a consumer, and I don't know. We'll pack the metaphors in or something. I don't know. I guess that's how you win awards. I don't know. As long as I get that little golden guy on my shelf, the world is a good place. You know.
You
But dude, let
definitely
me
can't.
ask you.
I can't help you win an award. I'm not that kind of filmmaker.
Dude, listen, I mean, that's the thing, man. I don't worry. I mean, after this interview, you'll get street cred. I mean, I'm building up my name in Hollywood. I assume this will get you whatever job you want. So don't
That's the
thank me.
only reason I'm doing this, man.
Yeah, I know. I'm only doing this for money as well. So I'm glad we're getting we know where we stand. But dude, the thing I love most about comedy films, and I've interviewed like Ross and Turber, David Dobkin, I mean, these great comedy filmmakers. And something that I feel like not a lot of people appreciate. I mean, you watch a horror film, I think you can appreciate on a level, wow, so much work went into that. But comedy, I think it's a little bit silent. You don't really watch a comedy film and say, wow, I wonder how they build up that joke or how they fit in that punchline. But so much of comedy is, like something may not be funny. You put a pause in there, all of a sudden it's funny. The delivery, you cut to a reaction shot. Is it hard for you as a director crafting comedy, or have you just done it so much it's kind of second nature to you now?
No, I think it's really hard, and it's one of those things that I think people that spend a life working on comedy, they always get this lip service from other people in the business or in the entertainment business, talking about acknowledging how hard comedy is, but comedy is rarely recognized for how difficult it is.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times people look at it through the lens of what they think is funny. So they'll say, oh, I saw that movie, it wasn't funny at all. And it's like, well, okay, it wasn't funny to you, but it was funny to these other people. And when you're making a comedy, you're not making it for one person, you're making it for a wide audience, particularly if you're making a big Hollywood comedy. And so you're trying to just find this sweet spot where you can make as many people laugh as possible and still stay true to a story and a narrative and all of that. And it's incredibly complicated. It's also incredibly fun, but it's really complicated.
Yeah, I mean, dude, I think you hit the nail on the head there. I mean, comedy, and the thing about comedy is that you don't really know if something's funny until you're playing it to an audience and whether or not they laugh or something. Have you ever had that? Have you ever had a moment that you thought was gold and it plays and just no one laughs? Or was there ever a moment that you considered like an emotional beat or something that's not, meant to be funny and people have laughed at it? Has that ever happened to you, or
Oh
have
yeah,
you not had that?
both of those things happen on every movie because in
Yeah.
comedy, audience testing is really important in comedy because you can't, because you think is something is funny, because your editor thinks something is funny, the actor thought it was funny, whatever. If you particularly something where where you're leaning into the joke,
Yeah.
if you're really leaning in and you're clearly making a joke and you put it in front of an audience of 300 or 400 people and it's just crickets, then you missed and you either have to go back and work on the joke or work on the gag, which sometimes we've had that experience where we've put it in front of an audience and a gag has completely bombed, and then we
No
sort of figured
way.
out, why aren't they laughing, this is so funny, and then we realize, oh, because we kind of gave it away, we jumped the joke, and then you recut it and go back and you get a roar. Sometimes you keep trying and you just can't make it work no matter what you do. And then, like you said, there's other things where you just write a line of dialogue, and like we had this thing in Instant Family where Octavia Spencer said something about how she likes pie, and she just said it. She wasn't making a joke about The Help, and we never recognized that it was a joke about The Help, and we never thought it was a funny line. And then the audience roared when they heard it, and we were all baffled. We were like, "Why are they laughing?" And we asked some people, and they said, "Oh, that she's making a reference to The Help, the other movie, The Help." And we were like, "Oh, oh, okay, no, she wasn't, but great, all right, as long as you,
No, you have to say yes. That was my intention as the filmmaker. It's like they said to Kevin Smith, "You shot Clerks in black and white. Was that a creative decision?" He couldn't afford color, but he was like, "Yeah, man. Oh, creative."
yeah,
That's what you have to say. You have to take credit for every small decision in your films, man. Oh man,
yeah."
that's fascinating. Would you say comedy's built in the editing room as a filmmaker? Is that where it all comes together? I mean, on set, I guess. I mean, I feel like if someone says something funny, you'll know it's funny. But when you take it to the editing room, it's a completely different atmosphere. Am I right? And I mean, I speak as someone who doesn't have any great comedy films under their belt. So I mean, what's that like for you?
It's comedies, it starts in the script. You find things on the day in production, and then sometimes you have to dial it in editorial. And sometimes, in fact, this is probably most of the time, if something happens on set that completely cracks up everybody on the set and we're all just dying laughing, it's almost a guarantee that it won't work in the movie. It's
Really?
crazy that way. It's if somebody does something on the set that just makes everybody crack up and you just think, oh my God, this is gold. The audience is going to lose their minds. And there's something about just certain things you just have to be there for.
Yeah.
And when you put them on film and you put them in front of an audience, sometimes they just straight up do not work. And then other times you have things that you just think, oh God, this joke, we just could never quite figure it out. We'll give it a shot. We'll see what happens. And it just destroys. And
Man.
you're like, oh, great. Okay.
Yeah, that's
So,
so fascinating. I actually can't believe that, really. So it'll be on set and it'll just be a thing you'll all find funny, and then it just doesn't work in the film.
yeah, we had something in Spirited where Will Ferrell was making these exclamations where he was basically just saying, instead of saying, damn it, he was shouting out the names of former drag racing drivers and really just funny names. And every time he would do it, we would all just lose our minds. Just the way he said it, it was so
Yeah,
funny. So we had a bunch of these takes with it in there, and we literally tried one at every test screening, and it just got nothing. And
really.
it was just one of those things that was just funny on the day, but it just, for whatever reason, it didn't land in the context of the scene with the audience. And I still contend that it was hilarious, but it
Yeah.
didn't end up in the movie.
Let me ask you this: Did you always know Spirited was going to be on Apple Plus when from its conception?
No,
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 really. Sorry, go ahead. No one's here to listen to me.
no. Well, my writing partner John Morris and I came up with the idea quite a while ago, and we we went and pitched it around, and the first person we pitched it to was Will Ferrell, and Will really liked the idea and he got on board. And then we were kind of busy doing some other things, and we sort of fleshed out the pitch a little bit more. And then we went and pitched it to Ryan Reynolds' producing partner, and he really liked it. So then we had Will and Ryan attached to it as a project. So then
Yeah.
we went and pitched it everywhere. And the reality, although I think this might be changing, but the
Really?
reality is that the streamers just have bigger budgets right now than the
Really?
studios do. They do, yeah. And so you're trying to figure out who is going to give you, it's not a question of somebody giving you the most money, it's the question of how much is this movie going to cost to make,
Yeah.
and who's going to really cover that, and if there's overages, who's going to be there with you and all of that. And Apple came in really strong. They really wanted the project. They really believed in it. When they talked with us about it, they seemed to really get it, and they seemed to really understand it. And what I liked about Apple is that it just felt like that at that moment in time, it was probably going to take a streaming service to make the movie as big as we want to make it.
Yeah.
And uh, um, and so Apple was game for that, but I also liked that this was going to be a really important movie for them.
Yeah.
Whereas on some other streaming services, it might not stand out as much as it would on Apple.
Yeah, no, I totally get what you mean with that. And I mean, when you were actually shooting the film, I assume Apple was already involved during the shoot because yeah, so while you were
Oh
shooting it,
yeah.
Apple, yeah. So I mean, when you were constructing this film, because David Dobkin, who's a comedy director, he directed Eurovision and he made that for Netflix. And he was saying while he was shooting it, he was like in the editing room, and he was saying to his editor, after that line, people are gonna laugh. So give it a breath. We need like a moment just before the next line. And the editor turned to him and was like, there's gonna be 6 people on a couch watching this. They're gonna hear the line. Did you have any moments like that? Because you knew, I mean, I think it does have a little bit of a theatrical release, right? But it's mainly on Apple Plus.
Well, no, we didn't have any moments like that, because that was also a big reason why we went with Apple, is because Apple, they believed in the project. They got what we were doing, that we wanted to do this big spectacle of a
Yeah.
musical. But they also were willing to do a legitimate theatrical release along with. And that means, sometimes when they say they're going to do a theatrical release, it means they just put it on a few screens for a week or two, just so that they can qualify for awards or whatever. I really wanted to make a big musical, and I wanted people to have the opportunity, if they wish, to see it properly in a
Yeah.
cinema with the big screen and great sound and all that. And Apple committed to that pretty early on. So our theatrical release is not massive. We're not, a standard release for a comedy would be about 3,500 screens in the US. We're on about 600 screens,
Really?
but 600 is plenty for a
Yeah.
Christmas movie like this, especially given that it's also on the platform at the same time. A lot of people are going to choose to see it at home. So, had they put it on the platform and on 3,000 screens, it would have been a disaster. So I think they handled it really perfectly. So they've really given people an opportunity to see it. And it was better than I thought. I thought it might be 200 or 300 screens. So the fact that it was on 600 screens, I was thrilled.
It's the best way to do it, man. That's the best way to do it. Yeah, but I
Yeah.
mean, so let me ask you this. This is a silly question, but I have to ask it. Is it hard to shoot a Christmas film when it's not during Christmas, when it's not the holiday season? I was thinking about this question and I was like, I have to ask me. I don't care if it sounds stupid. Is that difficult?
It's not that it's difficult. I mean, it's difficult because, so I've done it twice, and I've done it on virtually the same schedule both times, where we're kind of shooting spring, summer, fall, and finishing the movie. Both Daddy's Home 2, which was a Christmas film,
Yeah,
and
it
this
was. Yeah.
we finished both of those movies right before the Christmas season. So the hardest thing is, you've been looking at Christmas trees and hearing Christmas songs and dealing with Christmas for a whole year. And the minute you get done, the stores put up all the Christmas stuff and you hear Christmas songs. And
So it's Groundhog Day, you're saying. It's
yeah,
just Groundhog
so
Day. You're back up in it again. You're like, what's happening? I
yeah,
thought
so
we did this
when the
yesterday.
Christmas season is over this year, I'm gonna be like, it's gonna be very weird, because I've been living in Christmas for about 2 straight years.
Wow. So I'd say, is it next to Halloween film? Is that what you're saying? You're just going straight into horror? Just get a new season going or something? I mean, I don't, after shooting in Christmas. Dude, let
I
me
have
ask
I have no idea what's next.
dude, let me ask you this. Do you have a horror in you? A lot of comedy directors have a horror in them. Do you?
I like horror, and my writing partner and I helped produce a very small horror movie that we weren't, you know, terribly involved in. We were more at an arm's length on that one. Um, but it was interesting. It was very interesting kind of digging into that a little bit, although we weren't really the creative force behind it. Um, but no, what I learned on that is, just like comedy, just like everything else, it's a discipline, and it's something that um I think you really have to be steeped in
Yeah.
and really be, so I don't know. I think for me, I'd be more interested in some other areas. I definitely want to be moving into some new areas, but I think I'd be more interested in fantasy or sci-fi or adventure or that kind of thing than horror myself.
Yeah, I mean, I think horror and comedy, I think, are similar in a lot of ways because they both invoke feelings from the audience as opposed to, a way an action film would. They're both kind of feeling centric. Like an action film doesn't try and evoke something in you, really. I mean, I guess it does, obviously. But comedy film and horror are much more kind of upfront about that. But yeah, I could see you doing a sci-fi. I could see you doing a sci-fi.
Well, it's funny. I forgot. My writing partner and I have had this thriller. I wouldn't call it a horror movie. It's more in the tradition of, in the late 80s, early 90s, there were these phenomenal thrillers. The gold standard is oh gosh, the gold standard, and now I'm
Are
spacing
you
the
having a
title.
senile moment?
I really am.
Take your
Fatal
medicine and go back to
Attraction.
bed. It'll come
Yeah,
back from there on.
Fatal Attraction, and there were a lot of great thrillers that were just about people and about human relationships, but things like Cape Fear, and that were
Oh
really,
yeah.
really fun and scary, but they're not, ghosts and monsters and demons
Yeah.
and that kind of stuff. And we actually do have something that we're working on in the thriller space, and it is interesting because with thrillers, horror movies, comedies, set pieces are, an important part of those movies, and pacing, where you spend some time with the narrative and the characters, where you still want it to be funny, but then you want to get to these moments where you do like big crazy things that are really funny, and then kind of bring it back down. And I think horror has, and thrillers have, that similar kind of pacing, where you kind of work with the characters and the narrative a bit, get it a little spooky, build it up, do a big set piece, bring it back in. It's just
Yeah.
interesting structurally how they work.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the structure is such an important part of film, and it really does vary from project to project. I mean, despite the fact that they're all films, each genre kind of is constructed in a different way, and that'll never not be fascinating to me. Like, I mean, you want to make a comedy film, it's completely different from making an action, which is completely different from making a horror. There are kind of all these different pockets. Let me ask you this: we speak about genres. Something I've kind of noticed in your work is that you look at your work, they're kind of a true line. You look at That's My Boy. I feel like that's more of it. That's comedy straight. And then something like Instant Family, which, as much as it is comedy, I feel like it's more of a character led drama type of way. And then Spirited, which, I mean, it kind of jumps between the two. And like, I mean, you could say it's comedy, but it's musical. But I think the character and drama is always at the front. What's it like for you to blend these, genres? Is that your goal, to play with all these different things? I mean, some of your films are more straight comedies, some of your films aren't. I mean, what's that process like for you?
Um, that's actually one of my favorite things about filmmaking. And I think the people who like our movies like the way that we handle that, but it's also something that we get beat up for a lot, because we get accused often of being all over the place tonally. And it's something that we do intentionally,
Yeah.
that my hero growing up was John Hughes. And I loved that he could take something like Ferris Bueller's Day Off, that is so fun and just silly and ridiculous, and then go into this really heavy moment with Cameron, where he's really struggling with his future
Yeah.
and who he is, and and his identity and all of that. And so I grew up loving his movies and wanting to, that's the space I wanted to play in. I wanted to play with comedy, but I also wanted there to be drama. I wanted to be able to get into heavy moments and real issues and that kind of a thing. And I don't believe in the whole stay in your lane thing, that this movie
Yeah.
should be all funny and that should be all drama. And of course it's subjective to everybody of how much they're willing to kind of bounce around in those areas. But I love playing with that. And the Spirited, I think, Instant Family was really challenging because we set out, it's based partly on my own life. And
Yeah.
we set out to, whenever there's a movie about foster care, it's always something that's like this gut-wrenching drama. And it doesn't help. Like, people see those movies and it just scares them away from foster care and kids who are in the system.
Yes.
So we wanted to make something that was more like a rom-com, but it was about falling in love with your kids,
Yeah.
And some people just couldn't believe it. Like, how can you make a comedy about foster care? And we're not laughing at foster care. We're laughing at these crazy situations that it put me in, and then on Spirited, what I loved about working on Spirited is that people also forget that the original Christmas Carol is, they think of it as this fun Christmas uplifting thing, but Tiny Tim dies in the future of A Christmas Carol, and Scrooge has to kind of come back and rectify that. And you kind of forget how dark Christmas Carol
Dude,
gets.
Spirited gets pretty dark. I mean, there's some, Ryan Reynolds' character has to go back and change some. I remember sitting there thinking, oh my days, man. And there's kind of a moment at the end where something happens to one of the characters, and I was like, if he ends it right now, it's gonna, like, that'd be imagine a dark ending. I was like, that's gonna be the greatest thing ever. I'm gonna laugh so hard. Obviously, you did the right thing, because I mean, I'm sure so many children around the world witnessed that ending. And imagine, you should just fade it to black right. I think you know the moment I'm talking about, but just fade to black right there.
I do, but I will, in my defense, I will say we continue on from that moment within the rules of the story, and we definitely didn't unwind that moment.
Yeah.
The thing that you're referring to that happened, it did happen. So it's, we didn't shy away from it and say, oh, that didn't happen. We were like, no, it did happen, but then here's the way that played out.
Yeah. Oh,
And
dude.
that's
I mean,
actually one of the things I'm the most proud of with the movie.
yeah. Oh,
Because
dude, it was
there were
flawless.
a lot of people were wondering, can we pull that off? And I think we did.
Yeah, I was watching it. I was thinking, how are they going to end this? Because I couldn't conceive it. And that was I mean, sure, I have to commend you on that. You have my pat on the back there. But no, it's funny you should talk about Instant Family. I mean, you look at a film like that, and yeah, of course, it's really beautiful. Because I mean, like, my mother, I think I mentioned this in my initial message. She's a foster child, and that was something like, I don't think there's any child who really thinks about their parents growing up. It's just not something that really goes to your head. And once that film came out, I remember it. I mean, it was 2019 that film came out.
Uh, I think
Might be somewhere, sometime. But when that film came out, I remember we watched it, and I mean, it was something, because I just hadn't really thought about it. And I mean, knowing that my mother Donna was a foster child, afterwards we could talk about that and what it was like growing up, as part of the foster system and in Ireland and stuff like that. So I mean, when you can kind of give that connection, I mean, to me, film's about connection. Like, I can connect with film like Star Wars, I can appreciate how great it is, but film like Instant Family is almost, connection wise, on a level I can relate to that, because someone I know personally has gone through something like that. So it automatically kind of, I don't know, I guess there's a vulnerability there, it kind of cuts through my heart and I'm dragged in, if that makes any sense. So when you're making a film that deals with something as serious or as real as kind of fostering, do you have to kind of say to yourself, okay, well, I have to do this right, I have to handle this with some amount of trepidation? Did you struggle with that at all?
Yeah, absolutely. So I had my own story to work from,
Mm,
but we also met with a lot of kids and adults who had grown up in foster care, and we met with families who had adopted teen girls, and we got so many great stories out of it. And then it was just, it just kind of became this balancing act of, how do we really tell the truth about this? Like, there's a scene in Instant Family that some people were really shocked by, where Mark Wahlberg and Rose Byrne are talking about how much they hate the kids and how they just want to find some way to get out of this and give
yeah,
them back.
yeah, yes,
And,
yes.
and people have been like completely shocked by that scene. But when you get in, foster care is a very, very tricky thing to get involved in, and it just puts you in an emotional space that nothing else puts you in. I mean, you have these people in your house and you're supposed to be a family, and from the outside you look like you're a family, but you're not really a family yet. You're kind of still getting to know each other and trying to figure things out, and it's really difficult and really
Yeah.
hard. And including myself, every foster parent and adoptive foster parent that we talked to went through these times of going, oh my God, what have we done? We don't know what we're doing. This
Yeah.
is a disaster. We made a huge mistake. And so that was, trying to really be honest in the movie, but still also keep it funny. And actually how it came up was that my writing partner had been hearing all these stories from me from the time that I adopted my kids. And then he said, well, maybe we should do a movie about that. And I said, I don't know though. I mean, we do comedies. And he said, a lot of the stuff you told me is really funny. And I thought, oh yeah, it didn't seem funny to me at the time, all of it.
Yeah,
I guess,
yeah, that's the way it is. Nothing ever seems funny at the time. Afterwards,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
But I thought, yeah, no, actually, this stuff is really funny. And there's so many things in the movie that I love so much because I know how real they are because they came right from my life. When Mark Wahlberg's so excited about the idea after going the orientation, and his wife is saying to him, I think this is going to be harder than you think it is.
Yeah, yeah.
That was me.
Dude, I totally, and I feel like when you can make a film, I mean, whenever I feel like I talk to a director, we'll talk about a film, and the film will be some, huge action blockbuster, and they'll say, yeah, it's very personal to me. And I think you kind of look at that, and you can, of course, I mean, every project a filmmaker does has to be personal. You can't really, work 3 years in a film and have it not be personal. But something like Instant Family is a lot more, what's the word, it's a lot more like in your, like, you can feel that this project is far more personal than a lot of other films. I mean, without sounding like two pretentious artists talking, did you feel like you were exposing yourself for the world to see as a filmmaker? Was there something different about that than as opposed to making a film like Horrible Bosses 2? Was it different?
Oh yeah, very, very different. Because it wasn't just my story, it was a lot of other people's stories. My kids were involved, so it
Yeah,
was we were just trying to be really, really careful with it. And I knew that if we made something that was accessible, something that was legitimately funny and enjoyable to watch, not only would it be a better vehicle to get people talking about foster care, but it's more honest because
yeah,
our life isn't some gut-wrenching drama. Like, our life is funny and it's sweet and it's heartwarming and it's hard and it's painful and it's all those things. So I thought, why shouldn't the movie about this be funny and be heartwarming and be entertaining? And why can't it be all those things? And yeah, that one obviously is incredibly important to me.
dude, I love it. I think it's such a fantastic film. I mean, I've only ever teared up to 3 films, and that's one of them. So that's the highest praising. The other two
See,
are
I'm the opposite. I tear up at everything.
really.
Oh God, I am the easiest
That's
audience
your
when it comes to
senile
that.
age getting to you. That's your senile age getting to you. We were talking about this. This is what it is.
No, no, I've always been like that.
Really?
Yeah, I've always been like that.
It's
Yeah.
dog films. Dog films get me. It was the other two were like A Dog's Purpose and what's the one with Richard Gere, Hitachi a Hero Dog or something like that. And
Oh yeah.
they were both directed by Lassie Hallstrom. Those are the only 2 films. And I was like, who's this director? And it turns out he has like a niche for dog films that make you cry. And I was like, this dude has it out for me. He's making like emotional dog films. And Instant Family was of course being the other one. So high praise. There you go, man. But no, I mean, what I love about Instant Family is that we talked about all that tonally being different. I think this film is a really great example of it because, like, it's so funny. There's a scene where a character says, "Well, that's on you because our foster kid isn't going to do that shit." And I think the scene I'm on about. I think it's like halfway through the film. It's such a funny scene, and then there's another moment where Mark Wahlberg's character hugs his son, and you shoot it like through a window and you kind of just see the silhouette of them hugging. And I think that was a scene, like we talk about cutting through, getting to your heart. That was a scene that really got me tearing up. So, I mean, there you go. You can really balance those two genres. Has that influenced your work, on something like Spirited or was Instant Family the start of that? Or was that just was Instant Family the culmination of kind of genre mixing you've been doing since the start of your career?
I mean, I was always, like I said, I was a fan of John Hughes. Um, And so I always liked marrying heart and, a bit of drama with
Mm.
comedy. Um, Judd Apatow was doing it really well. And but John and I were also really big fans of, like, you know, Airplane and the Fairley Brothers
Yeah.
comedies and things that were really screwball comedies. And so we did a little bit of everything. We wrote on Hot Tub Time Machine and We're the Millers and things like that. The
Oh,
movies that
no
we
way.
did.
We're the Millers. You worked on
Yeah,
that.
yeah, we wrote several drafts of We're the Millers, and wrote a lot of the stuff that you saw in that film. And that was, I think, We're the Millers was the first one where we really got to get into some real family dynamics, even though it wasn't a family. It was
Yeah.
about
Oh well, yeah.
something.
It was a pack of drug smugglers, but basically it's a family. I mean, when you look at family, love, friendship, pack of drug smugglers, it's all barriers. I don't know.
Exactly.
But yeah, no, dude,
So,
that's fascinating. I mean, who's on your comedy Mount Rushmore? You talk about, some of your comedy heroes. I mean, as a comedy filmmaker, is there anything that you feel if you want to direct comedy, you have to watch? Are there any like specific influences? Is John Hughes the big one?
well, I mean, I don't think that way. I feel like there's too much of people saying, oh, you should watch this filmmaker and this filmmaker and this filmmaker. Because the problem is that film schools will use a lot of the same references all the time. And therefore, I think they wind up churning out these filmmakers that all have the same influences. So I just say,
Yes,
watch
that's a very good point, man. Yeah.
whatever you're interested in and whatever you like, even if it's a guilty pleasure, even if it's something you're not supposed to like.
Yeah.
If it speaks to you in some way, watch that. For me, comedy wise, I grew up, with like I said, the John Hughes movies, but also things like Ghostbusters and Stripes and Bill Murray and Steve
Yeah.
Martin and Blazing Saddles and Young Frankenstein and Mel Brooks and then some of the more screwball, spoof stuff, like Airplane and Naked Gun and that kind of stuff. And then the Fairley Brothers with Kingpin
Yeah,
and
man.
just such a varied, but then also, I love Wes Anderson and I
Yeah.
love, just all kinds of different, Edgar Wright's one of my favorite directors, one of my favorite storytellers. I just love Edgar Wright and
So good, man. Him and yeah, Wes Anderson as well as another ground. Those are just two fantastic filmmakers, and I can absolutely see that in your work. That kind of 80s Ghostbusters, Caddyshack, that period of film. I mean, you look at today's comedy filmmakers. At least I can definitely see that in your work. But yeah, those are some very good names, man. But yeah, I agree with your point about film schools. Like everyone has to watch Citizen Kane. I mean that's the way it is. I mean you have to watch Citizen Kane and stuff like that. These are all films. And I mean, every filmmaker is influenced in different ways. And I mean, yeah, that's just a great point there. So good job. You said something insightful this interview so far,
that's all I wanted to just, that's
at
all I was
least.
going for.
Yeah, so you're doing okay so far. I'll say that much. But so, dude, let me ask you this: you look at kind of the way film is now. Is there any world you'd like to jump into as a filmmaker? We talked about sci-fi, adventure, western. Is there any genre you'd like to jump into that you've yet to do anything with superhero films? Or are you kind of content making your own original comedy films?
I'm not interested in the superhero genre just because I feel like it's so flooded right now. There's so much of that I just feel like I don't, that's not really a place I want to go. Um, I, I love the old Amblin movies, the old Spielberg movies,
Yeah.
E.T. and Goonies and, Raiders and that kind of stuff. I think, a lot of times the thing that draws me to a genre is the score. That
Really?
my son is really into film score, and we've been listening to score all the time.
Is it
And
just
I'll just
Hans Zimmer playing 24/7 in your ear?
a lot of Hans Zimmer, yeah, hearing a lot of that, and sometimes I'll just hear a piece of score and I'll just think, oh my God, that's just pure magic. I want to make something that would deserve that
Yeah.
score, you know?
Yeah.
Um, and I'm not, for me, there's so many different kinds of films that I've absolutely loved in my life. And by the way, I want to stop to pay you a compliment for a second, because I went back and I watched some of your things, and I want to tell you what you're doing right, in my opinion.
Please,
You have
please.
you have an unbridled enthusiasm and love for film. And a lot of people that do what you're doing right now focus on the negative. This is what I hate. This is what I don't like. This is what's
Yeah.
stupid. This is what there's too much of. This is what, whatever. And I just don't think that that's going to get those people where they want to go, because this business and the work of creating a script, creating a film, it's really hard, and you have to work with a lot of different people. And I think almost the best quality you can have is just an absolute unbridled love and enthusiasm, where you can look at like the worst movie you've seen in a year and still be like, you know what though, I love that they did this, or I love
Yeah.
that they made that choice, or I can at least see that somebody inside that movie loved it and was really trying hard. And I think if you can try to focus on the positive of what's great about films and why you love them so much and they make you so happy, I think that'll get you where you want to go.
Oh, dude, that's the kindest thing you could possibly say. Man, that really, that's absolutely made my day, dude. No, I mean, coming from someone like you, like, I mean, like, I'm under no disillusions that I'm worthy enough to chat with the filmmakers I've gotten to. Like, I'm a jackass from my sitting room. But I mean, the truth is, like, look, people like you who have one of the biggest films in the world right now, taking the time to chat with me, it's something that's not lost on me. And that, like, that just kind of speaks volumes to who you are as a person. But yeah, I mean, it's hard not to love film. I feel like it's just such a great thing. And I mean, like, every single film someone put work into, and when you watch it, you can't help but kind of end up falling in love with it. That's the way I kind of don't see an alternative, but that's the kindest thing you could possibly say to me, man. And I really try my best. So thank you so much for saying that. That's far, far too nice of you, man. Truly.
No, it's absolutely true. And I think if you stick with that, if you just keep that in your heart, it's going to take you a lot of wonderful places. Because it is, as cynical as everything gets, it's a really magical business and
Yeah.
magical world. I still, when I have a meeting on the Paramount lot or something, I'll go to my meeting and then I'll go and just walk around in the back lot and just be like, wow, I'm still just bowled over and blown away by just the magic of movies.
That's literally it. It's all just so magical. So I assume this is your invitation that I can crash on your couch in a few years' time. That's
Let
basically.
me know when you're,
Don't say
let me know when
anything.
you're,
It's all
yeah.
right. Don't say anything. I'll just crash anyway. I'll just crash on the couch. I don't mind it. Just blankets. You can sort all that up. I mean, is there a breakfast in the morning? Maybe 12 p.m.
The only problem is I live in Colorado now, so I don't live in LA anymore.
Well, listen, you have like 5 years to move back to Los Angeles, so find some window in there that works. Don't say I'm not giving you options there. But no, I'm so sorry for taking up so much of your time. My last couple of
No, it's
questions.
fun, man. It's totally fun. Don't worry about it.
Oh, dude, amazing. My last couple of questions. Who are some of your directing heroes? I mean, we talked about John Hughes and we talked about kind of films in general. Was there anyone that, I mean, as a filmmaker, you just were really infatuated by on your journey into film?
I was always more focused on the movies than the directors. And there
Yeah.
were definitely certain people that I just loved their movies. Like I said, Edgar Wright, Spielberg, Mel Brooks, John Hughes. And there's many more than that I'm just not thinking of at the moment. But I've always kind of taken it on a movie by movie basis of just, wow, I
Yeah.
love that movie. Oh wow, this is, like when I saw The World's End, and I was already an Edgar Wright fan, and when I saw The World's End, I was just so blown away by it and by the ending of that movie. And I just thought, like, oh my God, this guy is definitely one of my heroes now. And so yeah, I'm a bit like you. I'm just an appreciator
Yeah.
of whatever works for me.
Was there ever a moment for you where you were like watching a film, you were like, nah, yeah, I want to make film. This is for me. Was it, I mean, every director says Jaws. And I remember when every director would talk about Jaws, I'd be like, Jaws, really? I mean, it was so out of left wing. And I had never seen Jaws up till like a month ago because my local cinema were doing the 25th anniversary and they were putting it back in cinemas. And I was like, Jaws in cinemas? Yeah. And I went to go see it with my friends. And it was like, yeah, okay, I can see why people love this film. Because when you see it on the big screen and the shark, maybe the shark doesn't look as great, but that's not important because it's just the characters. And I mean, it's definitely a film that you can see why people want to make film. Is there a film like that for you, a theatrical experience that made you want to become a filmmaker, or was it just your childhood that made you say, okay, this is something I want to do?
I was just always interested in movies. And honestly, I grew up, you know, I grew up just kind of, middle class, Midwest. My dad was a mailman. It wasn't the kind of thing that you think you could do. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
I
So
get
it's
what
not
you
like
mean.
I was 15 going, I'm going to be a director. That seemed preposterous.
Yeah.
It, I just loved movies. And I think where it really started to become where I got more interested in it, there was a short period when DVDs were king for a while,
What?
where
What are you saying? DVD?
very short period where the commentary track came into, where people started doing commentary tracks. And I just started absorbing commentary tracks and
Yeah.
just started. I loved them. I loved listening to filmmakers talk about how they made their movies and how they shot these scenes, and that's what really got me really excited and interested in it. But for me, it was more like, hey, I just want to make a movie with my friends. I didn't think that any of this was possible, and I
Yeah.
did do that. I made a movie just with a bunch of friends for no money, and we spent literally like a year and a half working on one movie, and it was the most fun I've ever had. And it was really hard and it was really fun. And I thought that would be the end of it. I thought we'd make this movie and hopefully it's at least kind of funny and people will like it. And it kind of turned into a career after that. Yeah. So for me, it was a very gradual thing.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, no, dude, that's kind of the best way to do it. I mean, we all grow up watching film, and I mean, kind of seeing that magic. I mean, just getting your start making films with your friends. I think that's kind of one of the best ways to do it, and kind of, put yourself out into this world where kind of comedy is the thing. I mean, do you feel like you've developed a skill for directing comedy? Are you better at directing it now than you are when you directed it back at the start of your career? Have you kind of learned how to not no wait, that's not me saying that you're bad at directing comedy at all, but do you feel like you've just learned the tips and the tricks for directing comedy?
Yeah, I'd like to think so. I mean, it's a double-edged sword because you definitely get better. You can kind of hear something and know like that's just not going to work. Like I get
Really?
why, you kind of hear something because comedy is mostly listening. I mean, you can definitely do sight gags, and we do a lot of that, but
Yeah.
so much of comedy is in the sound, and it's in the voices, and it's in the sound effects, and it's in whatever that you can hear if something is funny or not sometimes. And but I think that the downside is, when you've done it enough, you start to just become a bit bored with certain things, and you're just trying to do something new and something different. And you end up kind of taking swings that maybe you shouldn't take and whatever. I think it's trying to find that happy medium between, like, when I was doing it when I was young, we didn't care. Just we would
Yeah.
make a joke about anything, we would try anything, we would do anything. And then as you get older and you've done it a bunch, you're kind of like, nah, I don't want to do that. That's not going to work. But you start to edit yourself probably a little more than you should, you know?
Yeah. I mean, dude, I mean, I love the idea of just saying, I don't know what I'm doing, but screw it, I'll do it anyway. And just having that freedom. And I feel like that's kind of the best way to do it. I mean, let me just, before we wrap up, I mean, we'll talk Spirited. I suppose we better touch back on it because people, I guess, should go watch it. It's a good film. Do you have a favorite shot or scene from Spirited as a filmmaker that just makes you go, yeah, that was good. That was good by me. That was a good shot by me. Or a favorite scene?
I've got a bunch. I mean, however this sounds, I'm so proud of that movie and I really love it. And
Yeah.
I just think that everyone who was in it did such a great job. I mean, you have to consider, we didn't have Broadway stars as our leads. We
Yeah.
had actors and people that had to learn how to dance and had to learn how to sing and yet still carry the narrative and all of that. And so there's certain, yeah, I mean, Ryan Reynolds' first song, Bringing Back Christmas, just the whole spectacle of that I just think it's so much fun. And
Yeah.
if I had to give a shot, there's one shot where Ryan is walking towards camera and he's kind of motioning and people behind him are throwing tables almost as though he's doing it magically, but they're,
Is that when
because
he's in
he's,
the white suit at the
yeah.
kind of yeah, that's probably my favorite consecutive scene in the film. Just that whole thing, because the way I mean just none of what he's saying is it's just really riling them up. I think that's an amazing thing. But yeah, would that be if you had to pick?
I mean, I love that. I also love the final number, Do a Little Good, that's done in front of the bus on the street with the snow hanging in the air.
Yeah.
and
How did
and
you do that?
That was all visual effects. That
Yeah.
was something that was in the very first draft of the script, that it just said the snow hovers in the air, which that's one of those things where you write one sentence and then that sentence ends up costing a lot of money and a lot of time.
It's like I was talking to David Goyer, who writes Blade, and he was like, and something I've learned during my first script, I wrote like, and Blade is now faced with unfathomable doom, caressed into the million seas of pure horror. And the director was like, "How do I shoot that? What does like? I mean, that looks great on the page, but like that's going to be a cool 5 mil to get that shot." So I mean, what do you mean with that? But yeah, dude,
Well,
I
if
think
anybody watches this for pointers, I see that all the time, and I agree with him. That annoys the hell out of me when I see something in a script where, it says, Gary walks in, he's having an existential crisis over the loss of his Buick, and you're like, if you, and I think that's a rule of screenwriting, you have to be able to see how that's going to come out, whether it's going to come out in the dialogue or we're going to see it or we're going to,
yeah,
but when people write things like that, I mean, sometimes you have to let the actor know how they feel in a certain moment so that they can, perform that. But a lot of times people will write really important exposition just into the action lines of the script that
yeah.
don't appear anywhere in the actual filming. And then if they do that, and usually we're doing our own, we're working off our own scripts, but when we read other people's scripts and we see that, I always have that same question: how are you going to shoot that?
Dude, I think what you do so great is visual storytelling. Like, there's a scene in Spirited where Ryan Reynolds, I'm not going to spoil it, he's at the hospital bed. There's kind of a scene in the hospital. He's getting taken kind of through his past, and it like the whole story there, we see it in his face, and it's told visually, and it's told through the visual language. It's kind of told with the shots you use and the emotion that's expressed, and he runs away and stuff like that. And I feel like I love one of my favorite things in films is just silent moments between characters that just kind of says so much when two characters kind of look at each other. Yeah, I think obviously what I've been saying this whole interview, I feel like you're a very good visual storyteller. So I mean, there you go. Man, my last couple of questions before I let you go. What advice would you have for anyone looking to become a filmmaker?
Uh, well, I guess I would go back to what I said to you earlier, is try to stay positive and focus on what you love about films
Yeah,
and the films that you love, and don't dwell so much on the films that you hate and what you hate about films. Because even when you hear people talk and, when people are like, oh, that movie was terrible, I left, I walked out in 20 minutes. I just think, well, what did you learn then?
yeah,
Because even if you see a movie that you really hate or you really are not into, there's a lot of lessons you can take from those movies. And sometimes you'll even see like, wow, they did these things really right, but then here they just kind of lost me here or there, or whatever. And then the other thing I would say is that you got to just do it. You got to just make movies,
yeah,
and we did it purely for the love of it. The first time we just kind of were like, me and a bunch of different people that I knew kind of wanted to do it, and we learned so much because we built all the props, and
yeah,
we had to figure out how to record the audio. And by the way, that I guess this is another one, and this is something that you'll hear from a lot of people in a lot of places, is that don't shortchange the audio. If you're going to go and make a movie on your phone, be really careful with the sound, because especially when it comes to when somebody's watching a student film or a cheap film or whatever, they'll forgive the picture because they'll expect that it's, they know that you don't have these amazing cameras and lights and whatever. But if it sounds terrible, it's just hard to watch. But if it
yeah.
sounds pretty decent, people will really stick with it more.
Yeah, dude, that's some amazing. I mean, camera centric advice. I mean, dude, that's what I love about interviewing directors is that it's basically free film school. But another part of it is that, like, yeah, no one like ever tries. Like, everyone who makes a film does it because they love it. Like, they truly just love film. Like, it's a hard thing to do, and to spend 3 years on a project, you have to do it because you love it, man. And that's why I feel like it's a great world. I mean, Sean, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to
I got
chat
to
on
give
this.
you one more though, because I forgot about this one. Here's
All
the
right,
other one: is even on the smallest student film, be good to the crew.
yeah.
I think that people do get sometimes caught up in this idea of like, I'm the director, do what I say,
Very Stanley
and
Kubrick, like, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, I completely
yeah,
get
and
what
I
you're
mean,
saying there.
the director does have to make a lot of decisions and has to do a lot of, tough stuff and whatever, but film crews, it's one of the things that's so fun to work in movies. Film crews work so hard,
Yeah.
and good film crews love working hard. They just love it because they're into it with you, and they're there with you, and you really love these people that are, are working so hard and helping and making great decisions on their own. And so even if you're working with a crew of 5 people, be good to your crew.
Yeah, this furthers my hypothesis that comedy directors are just the kindest people in the world. I mean, so yeah, dude, I can absolutely, I think that's amazing advice. And Sean, let me just say thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me at one of the busiest points in your career. Before I let you go, are you on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter? Is there anywhere people can go follow you or check out your work?
Nope. You can just look at my movies, and otherwise you can leave me alone.
Sean, you're a better man than I am. You're not on social media. Any new projects you can promote? The big one, obviously, being.
Just Spirited. Just, I think that we've gotten, I mean, look, it's a musical, so it's not for every single person, but we have gotten the compliment a lot of people saying, and this is one of my favorite things to hear, I hate musicals, but I loved Spirited. So even if you hate
Yeah.
musicals, maybe give it a shot.
So
Because I got to say, Will Ferrell, Ryan Reynolds, and Octavia Spencer are so wonderful together,
yeah.
and
Oh, dude, totally.
they're worth checking out.
The cast is fantastic, but absolutely don't let that take away from Sean's directing shot. Like I can say this because Sean can. He does an amazing job directing this film. I genuinely feel like it's film of the year. Just the way he visually told a story and the angles and the way he told it. I really feel like it's something special. It's on Apple Plus now. Everyone, you should go watch it. I'd highly recommend it. But Sean, it's been such a pleasure chatting with you. Everyone, before we finish up, Sean's a better man than I am. I'm over on Twitter, Daniel Free 33. Please make sure to like and subscribe. And as always, if you have the means, please make sure to donate to the National Deaf Children's Society. Link for that in the description. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. This has been my interview with my new best friend, Sean Anders. Go check out all of his film and go check out his work. I will see you all in the next video. Bye.